Hey everybody, hope everybody is well. I wanted to make a video that accompanies a blog post I wrote about how I used a variety of different projects, mostly open source projects, to get Nextcloud running in the cloud, hence the name, and running on Kubernetes. I did this with a service mesh and an Ingress controller to enable access and control of that cluster. Why Nextcloud in the first place? Well, I have been experimenting a lot with Nextcloud recently. I wanted to sort of reduce a lot of the cloud services that I use, and I've been experimenting with it. I can actually show you. I mean, Nextcloud, if you're not familiar, is kind of a personal cloud you could run in a variety of different ways. I actually have one running at home, and I'm going to obscure the URL here so you don't see it, on a Raspberry Pi at home. And here's a photo of the Raspberry Pi as well. And I have a reasonably basic setup right now, but you can see I have some file sharing in here, and here's the folder locally on my machine as well. And I got it working using Nextcloud Pi, which is a kind of pre-configured image for running on a Raspberry Pi. So this is an option, and I'm able to get mine working online thanks to having a router that enables this sort of access, but that's not always that easy. So in this video, and again, take a look at the blog post, and here's a link for it, I'm going to walk through how I got this working on a public cloud with an Ingress and a service mesh. There's a bunch of different ways you could do this. I've ended up using Kong Ingress, and also from open source project from Kong, Kuma, a service mesh. I found them to be pretty easy to get started with, bearing a few caveats here and there in mind. And also I use Google Cloud equally because I found it one of the easy options to get started with, once again, bearing in mind a few caveats. So let's get started. First and foremost, we need a cluster. I'm using GKE because I just found it the easiest way to get started. There's a few things we need to change here. Firstly, do not use autopilot, use standard. Autopilot hides and obscures a few things that we need to get this working. And another thing we need to do, I'm definitely going to be speeding up bits of footage here. I was going to change this to a more local zone to me. Let's go for Europe somewhere. Yes, thank you very much. Let's give it a name. How about, yep, why not? And the other thing we need to change under the default pool nodes is we want to change to this image. And again, there's some issues with using Kuma and other service mesh with this image. And actually, I'll post the link to the GitHub issue that discusses those, but this solves it in the meantime. Everything else we can pretty much leave as is. Click create and wait, and we'll be back soon. And now we're back. That could take a little bit of time. With the cluster ready, and we can see the green tick here, grab the connect string. I'm going to use the gcloud command line tool I have, so make sure you have that installed too. And we can make sure we're connected to the cluster. The other thing you're also going to need is Helm. I use Helm in a few different places, so make sure you have Helm installed as well. Now, we're going to need certificates at some point. This page is the one I want. Going to need a certificate to enable secure connections at some point. I found doing this early in the process to be the easiest place to do it. And do note here, if we're running on GKE, which we are, well, I am in this case, I need to use this command first. So to get the right permissions we need. So let's do that. Okay. Excellent. Wait a second. And in the meantime, we'll get the next line we need, which is to actually start setting up the resources. Okay. Now at this point, we can also jump into some kind of Kubernetes visualization management tool. We can use the one provided by GKE and have a quick look at what's going on. Not there. Maybe it's not there yet. There we go. Just need to refresh. Took a little bit of time. There we go. We can see those items are now there. So with that in place, what's next? Now let's add Kuma itself. Here are the instructions I followed again. Okay. And I'm not going to do all these steps. I'm going to do some of these steps. So I will definitely add the repo. Let's do that with Helm, as I mentioned. So I was using Helm here. Add the repo. Yep, I already have it on my machine, but you get the idea. And we'll create the namespace as well, like we see here. There we go. And finally, install here. And that will take a little bit of time. We can also keep an eye on it here. That's we can see all the namespaces now as well. So it should start coming up. There we go. Brilliant. All right. So that's Kuma's going to get ready there in the background. And in the meantime, now let's sort out Nextcloud. I'm going to jump into some code in Visual Studio Code now to show you some different things here. So first we want to make a namespace. I've got the file I've been using here. And this just means that we can then say that any of the resources we make part of this namespace are detected by Kuma. And that makes things a lot quicker and a lot easier. So let's apply this namespace and create it for the Nextcloud application itself. Okay. Oops, I'm not in the right folder. There we go. Do that again. There we go. And then we're going to need persistent volume claim. I've got the file here. This is to store all sorts of things, but specifically in this case, some of the persistent data and the database and things like that. We're going to use a predefined storage class on GKE, although this will probably still work locally as well. So I've got some copy and pasted commands prepared. Let's apply that. Yeah, and again, if we wanted to go here, we'll probably start to see resources. Yeah, there we go. We can see the namespace has appeared. There we go. And probably some of the other items are now here as well, possibly. Oh, we haven't really added anything for Nextcloud yet. And now we need to add the Helm repository. Again, I've done this already, so we're going to get the same message. Yep, it already exists, but you'll see something different. Now, next, we want to get the configuration values. Nextcloud uses a lot of configuration. I'll show you kind of what I've got here. So a lot of these are passed to the pods. So a way to get this file in the first place is to use this command. I've already run it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have these values here. And you can use this command to create that file and then change what we need. And what we change in particular here is I change the domain. This is going to be the final domain. And I change the database configuration, which is down here, to make sure we have the correct settings and to use the correct storage claim. And we're going to make some more changes to this file in a minute, but that's all we need for right now. So now we can install using those values. And this might take a little bit longer. And this does take a little bit of time to get going. Ignore all this text here. This is not going to be useful to us because we're going to do things a little differently. So this will fix itself eventually because there's a bunch of different pods that are spinning up behind the scenes, basically. And we just sort of have to wait for everything to become ready. I've found it's usually because it's waiting for the database, and then the PHP code of Nextcloud is waiting for the database to be ready. So you have to wait for one and then the other becomes ready. So we'll come back to this shortly. And now a few minutes later, we're back with green across the board. We have Nextcloud running as well in its namespace. So the next step is to add an Ingress controller so we can actually access things. And I followed these instructions here. And again, I'm going to follow most of these, but not all of them. So we're definitely going to use the resource definitions here. Paste that in. There we go. And whilst that's doing its thing behind the scenes, I will show you I've got two files here. Because we need to do things in two different steps. We actually need to open up access to the service before we can create the secure version of the service. So we start with a non-secure version first. This will become more apparent in a minute. And if you are following along, you should change, of course, these host values to match your subdomain and domain. This probably won't work for you. So let's get this one going. This one I will type in because I want to make sure I get the right file. I have two files with very similar names. There we go. Okay. Now we need to next know the IP address, the external IP address of the cluster, which we can do with this command. There it is. And another step where we need to wait for a bit. We go to a hosting provider. I use Netlify for mine, for my main website. It's just a static site, so. And we should create whichever kind of option you like. I'm going to go for an A record. There we go. Use the correct IP address. And of course, this is DNS, so it can take a while. Let's, out of interest, see if it's working. And if not, we'll come back later. It looks like it's not working, so we'll come back later. All right, and I'm back again. How long did that take for you? It took a while for me, even to a point where I was double checking I hadn't done something wrong. But now we can see this is working, sort of. It's not secure. So this is working on HTTP. And if we were to go to HTTPS, we would get, a self-signed certificate warning. There we go. And that's what we're going to fix next. So we need to use a certificate issuer. And we're going to use Let's Encrypt for this and use a cluster issuer definition. I have, of course, a YAML file to show you here. I've put my email address. I made sure, I don't know if it's necessary, I use the email address associated with the GKE account just in case. And we can see that we are matching to the Ingress here, and the rest of it is somewhat standard Kubernetes with the certificate manager we used earlier. So let's fire that up. We'll copy and paste a command here. All right. Okay. Now, with that in place, we need the next step of the Ingress, which is bringing in the secure components here and here, basically. So we reapply. I can just remove that there. And again, we wait. I should, of course, point out that you should change these values here as well, basically building upon the previous file. So it's somewhat similar. And we wait a little while here. We can keep an eye on things to see what's happening by using this command. So it's not ready yet. And I'll be back again in a few minutes when that is working. Okay, so now Nextcloud is here and working and available with cert enabled and a secure connection. We're not going to really mess around with actually logging in or doing very much with Nextcloud here. What we're going to do is a little bit with the service mesh, because it's there, but it's not doing a great deal. There's a whole bunch of things you can enable. We're going to actually look specifically at the metrics. So use some Prometheus and Grafana to take a look at what's going on in the cluster. So let's install that first. I'm using the Kuma CTL command line tool. You will need that installed as well. This will take a little bit of time. So in the meantime, let's look at also the mesh file we're going to create, which is using Kuma's custom resource definition and just enabling the metrics backend. And we need to apply that in the Kuma namespace. That will take a little bit of time to set up and we'll leave it running there. But one thing we actually need is metrics to report on. And Nextcloud can do this. Nextcloud actually has quite a lot of config here we can experiment with. And we can see here, one of the things is Prometheus exporter for metrics, but it's not enabled. So let's enable it. It's using this repository, this image repository. And we also need to ensure that there are these annotations. So on the pods, I just double check I've got everything in the right place. Yeah, those are the ones we need. We could add more key value pairs here, but we'll leave that right now. But because we've made changes to the settings, we're going to need to, oops, getting my command, delete what we have. Sometimes give a warning. Let's hope it's okay this time. Yep, that's okay. And then reinstall it with those values. And again, this will take a little bit of time as it did before. So I'll be back shortly when that is up and ready. And after all that, I hope you're back. Everything's running. All the expected pods are running. Everything is back from Nextcloud and metrics and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're on the final step. We're going to monitor. So what we're going to do is port forward. So we can get Grafana running locally. And let's refresh this. There we go. The default details are admin and admin. Very good. I need to get a new password, even just for a demo. Okay. Now, and I hope we should be able to see. There we go. Nextcloud metrics. I mean, there may not be much to look at, but the fact they're even there. Oops. I sometimes forget. There we go. There we go. Woo! Working. Metrics coming in from our running Nextcloud instance on Kubernetes, service mesh, Ingress, etc., etc. Whew. That was a long process, a lot of waiting around, mostly. Yeah, so in this video, I looked at getting Nextcloud working with Kubernetes, enabling web access with Ingress, and enabling some service mesh features with service mesh. And there's also a lot more we could have done. I mean, I kind of quickly wrapped through some of these. We could do security, security policies. We did monitoring, but we could also have management as well. And there's a whole bunch of other things we could have done, including DNS, actually DNS handled inside Kuma itself as well. We could have also handled instead of using my DNS provider. And also, for example, in the file here, we're using username and password. We can also do secrets management in Kuma, all those sorts of things. So there's a whole bunch of other things we could have done, but we didn't do. But I hope you found that useful. And yeah, run your own cloud, run your own self-hosted, or in this case, Google-hosted cloud. And let me know how you get on. I'd love to hear your experiences and how you use Nextcloud as well, how you use Service Mesh, how you use Ingress, how you use Kubernetes. I'd like to hear all those things. And I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.